Imagine standing at the base of a towering stone pyramid, its sharp edges silhouetted against a fiery sunset, the last rays of light painting the ancient carvings in hues of orange and deep red. The air hums with an almost palpable energy, a silent testament to the powerful rituals once performed there. What dark secrets lay enshrined within these colossal structures, veiled by centuries of mystery, hinting at practices so profound and perhaps so disturbing that they continue to challenge our understanding of one of history's most fascinating civilizations? Pull back the curtain on the Aztec Empire, a society built on intricate beliefs, a powerful cosmic vision, and a series of ceremonies that defined their very existence. The Aztecs were more than just fierce warriors and brilliant architects. They were masters of ritual, their entire cosmos interwoven with complex ceremonies designed to appease the gods, ensure the sun's daily journey, and maintain the delicate balance of their world. Their practices, though alien to our modern understanding, were deeply logical within their own framework, a vibrant tapestry of faith, philosophy, and a profound connection to the natural world. But for all their sophistication, some of these rites plumbed profound depths, revealing aspects that would undoubtedly shock and unsettle modern sensibilities. This journey takes us deep into the heart of their spiritual world, where the boundaries between life and death, man and God, were fluid, and where the most significant events were marked by rituals that ensured survival and prosperity. We are about to embark on an extraordinary exploration, not just into history, but into the very essence of human belief and the lengths to which a civilization will go to protect its way of life. Prepare to uncover 30 dark rituals that not only defined the Aztec worldview, but also served as the very bedrock upon which their mighty empire was sustained. From the elaborate preparations to the chilling climaxes, each ritual offers a unique window into a society driven by a powerful spiritual imperative, where cosmic order was maintained through profound acts of devotion and sacrifice. This isn't just about ancient history, it's about understanding the core of human nature, the quest for meaning, and the enduring power of belief, no matter how unsettling its manifestations may appear. Join us as we peel back the layers of time to reveal the mesmerizing and often terrifying spiritual landscape of the Aztec civilization, a journey that promises to leave you with a newfound appreciation for the complexities of the past and the enduring mysteries that continue to confound us. This isn't merely a recounting of facts, it's an immersive dive into the very soul of a lost world, where every ceremony, every offering, and every sacred act held profound significance in a cosmic dance between humanity and the divine. Among the many profound rituals of the Aztec civilization, one stands out as both iconic and deeply unsettling to modern sensibilities: the extraction of the human heart. This wasn't merely an act of violence, but a deeply symbolic, religiously charged event, believed to be absolutely crucial for the very survival of the cosmos. Imagine, if you can, a scene at the pinnacle of a towering pyramid, where the air is thick with the scent of incense and the rhythmic beat of drums. A priest, adorned in elaborate regalia, would stand ready with a finely sharpened obsidian blade, its edge capable of cutting with astonishing precision. The victim, often a captive warrior of immense bravery, would be stretched across a sacrificial stone, their chest exposed to the sky. The ritual was performed with chilling efficiency. The priest would make a swift incision, plunging the blade into the chest cavity, and with trained hands extract the still beating heart. This organ, pulsing with life, was considered the most precious offering imaginable, a direct conduit of the vital life force known as tonali. For the Aztecs, tonali was more than just a biological concept. It was the essence of a living being, a divine spark that emanated from the sun god Huitzilopochtli. By offering this fresh, potent tonali to the gods, particularly to Huitzilopochtli, the Aztecs believed they were literally feeding the sun, empowering it to continue its daily journey across the sky and preventing the terrifying prospect of cosmic collapse. This practice, while gruesome, was rooted in a profound cosmological fear. The Aztecs believed that the universe was fragile, constantly teetering on the brink of destruction. Their mythology spoke of previous worlds that had ended in cataclysms, and they saw themselves as living in the fifth sun, an era that also faced the threat of annihilation if the gods were not appeased. The sun, their ultimate source of life and warmth, was a hungry deity that required sustenance. Without the regular replenishment of tonally through these heart offerings, the sun would weaken, cease to move, and plunge the world into eternal darkness, signaling an end of days for humanity. So, from their perspective, these sacrifices were not acts of cruelty, but rather the highest form of devotion, a necessary and sacred duty to maintain universal order. It was a terrifying bargain, but one they believed ensured their world would endure. Beyond the daily offerings of the heart, the Aztecs faced an even more profound cosmic anxiety every 52 years, culminating in what they called the New Fire Ceremony. This ritual was not merely a tradition, it was a desperate gamble against the very end of their world, a moment when time itself seemed to hold its breath. Imagine an entire civilization plunging into darkness. For days leading up to the ceremony, every single fire throughout the vast Aztec Empire was extinguished, from the grand temple braziers to the humblest hearth in a farmer's dwelling. The cities and villages lay silent and cold, shrouded in an eerie, unsettling gloom. All household idols and symbols of the gods were ritually destroyed, creating an atmosphere of profound anticipation and dread. This act of extinguishing all flames symbolized the temporary cessation of all life and activity, a mirroring of the cosmic uncertainty that loomed over them. It was a societal-wide act of collective vulnerability, a moment when the very survival of their world hung in the balance. The night of the New Fire Ceremony was one of unparalleled tension. As the constellation known as the Pleiades reached its zenith directly over their heads at midnight, priests would gather on the Hill of the Star, a sacred site near Tenochtitlan. A chosen victim, often a captive warrior, would be prepared for sacrifice. This wasn't just any sacrifice, it was the pivotal act that would determine whether the sun would rise again. As the obsidian blade descended, a truly chilling act unfolded. A wooden fire drill was inserted into the chest cavity of the sacrificed individual, attempting to ignite a new flame directly from the still warm body. This nascent spark, born from death, represented the renewal of life and the continuity of time. The success of this terrifying ignition was paramount, for if the new fire failed to catch, it was believed that the cosmos would literally come to an end. The fifth sun, their current world, would collapse just as previous suns had vanished into darkness and chaos. The moment the flame sparked to life was met with a collective sigh of relief that would ripple through the empire, a release of centuries of built-up dread and uncertainty. From this single, sacred flame, runners would then race to every corner of the empire, carrying torches to relight all the fires, symbolizing the rebirth of the sun and the continuation of the world. Homes would once again glow with warmth and light, and life would resume, albeit with new pottery, new clothing, and a renewed sense of gratitude for another 52 years of existence. This ceremonial renewal was not just a symbol. For the Aztecs, it was the actual engine that propelled the sun forward, ensuring the cyclical nature of time and preventing the ultimate cosmic catastrophe. It underscores the profound existential fear that permeated Aztec life and the drastic measures they believed were necessary to perpetuate their world. Just as profoundly disturbing, yet equally central to Aztec cosmology, were the rituals dedicated to Xipe-Totec, the flayed god. This deity was revered as the god of spring, agricultural renewal, goldsmiths, and liberation. His ceremonies were perhaps one of the most visually shocking displays for outsiders, involving the flaying of human skin. This wasn't merely a symbolic act, It was a literal, visceral reenactment of the shedding of the old, barren earth to reveal the new, fertile ground beneath, an essential process for sustaining life through agriculture. The ritual was performed with a terrifying seriousness, reflecting the Aztecs' deep reliance on maize and other crops for their survival. Imagine the scene, a sacred space filled with the aroma of copal incense, where a chosen individual, usually a captive warrior, would be ritually sacrificed. Following the sacrifice, the most grueling part of the ceremony began. The victim's skin would be carefully and meticulously flayed from their body. This removed skin, still warm and gruesome, would then be donned by a priest of Zyp-Totek. For 20 days, these priests would walk among the people, wearing the decaying human skins. The sight and smell must have been utterly horrifying, as the skin would gradually dry, blacken, and begin to rot, clinging to the priest's body like a macabre second garment. The purpose of this prolonged and grotesque spectacle was not to instill fear in a punitive sense, but rather to inspire a profound, almost spiritual awe. It symbolized the earth's renewal, the shedding of its old, dry skin in the winter, and the emergence of fresh, green growth in the spring. The priest, encased in the putrefying skin, became a living, walking embodiment of Zyp-Totek, a terrifying but vital representation of fertility and abundance. The stench and decay were an integral part of the process, reminding everyone of the cycle of death and rebirth that was essential for their sustenance. The act of the priest wearing the decaying skin for an extended period underscored the slow, natural process of decomposition and regeneration. As the skin withered and eventually broke apart, it mirrored the dry husks of corn shedding to reveal new kernels, or the hard ground breaking open for new plants to sprout. The people would witness this transformation daily, a constant, visceral reminder of the sacrifices required for the continuation of life. It was a potent, unsettling visual sermon, driving home the idea that life, prosperity, and the very sustenance of the community were dependent on these cyclical transformations, often born from sacrifice and decay. This extreme ritual served as a constant, tangible link between their gods, their agricultural cycles, and their very existence, emphasizing that the gruesome was inseparable from the sacred in their worldview. Amidst the brutal splendor of Aztec rituals, perhaps none tug at the heartstrings quite as fiercely as the sacrifices made to Tlaloc, the formidable god of rain, fertility, and water. This particular practice involved the heartbreaking offering of children, a grim testament to the Aztecs' desperate plea for life-giving rain in a land where drought could spell collective doom. To us, the notion of sacrificing a child feels inherently monstrous, yet for the Aztecs it was a profound act of devotion, a last resort in their relentless battle against the caprices of nature. They believed that Tlaloc, a deity capable of both immense generosity and devastating wrath, demanded the purest sacrifices to unleash the rains vital for their crops and, by extension, their very survival. The chilling aspect of these rituals lay in a specific, crucial detail. The children chosen for Tlaloc were often made to weep before their sacrifice. The Aztecs believed that the tears of these innocent victims were sacred, symbolic of the rain itself, and would thus entice Tlaloc to open the heavens. Imagine the scene: small children, sometimes just infants, adorned with feathers and jade ornaments, perhaps given hallucinogenic drugs to ease their terror or confuse their understanding, led to mountain shrines, places considered closest to the heavens and therefore more potent for communicating with the rain deity. The ceremonies often took place during dry seasons when the earth cracked and crops withered, amplifying the desperation that drove such a terrible choice. Often, the children would be killed by drowning, a symbolic return to Tlaloc's watery domain, or by throat cutting, their innocent lives spilling forth as a direct appeal for water. The sight of these weeping children, their tears flowing freely, was not a sign of their torment to the Aztecs, but rather a hopeful omen, a visual promise of the impending rains. The weight of this ritual was immense, not only for the families who surrendered their children, but for the entire community who pinned their hopes on these harrowing offerings. Archaeological discoveries at sacred sites, such as the Great Temple of Tenochtitlan, have unearthed the remains of children, some showing signs consistent with ritual sacrifice, providing some confirmation of these ancient accounts. These findings give a tangible, albeit disturbing, glimpse into the Aztec worldview, a world where the lives of the most vulnerable were offered up in a desperate gamble for the collective good, a stark reminder of the profound extent to which a civilization would go to appease its gods and secure its future against the harsh realities of its environment. It was a practice born not of malice, but of a deep existential fear and a belief system that placed cosmic balance above individual life. Moving from the heartbreaking sacrifices for Tlaloc, we encounter another ritual that profoundly showcased the Aztecs' unique blend of reverence and stark brutality. The elaborate ceremony culminating in the sacrifice of a chosen youth during the Toxcatl festival. This wasn't a sudden, impromptu event, but a year-long, meticulously orchestrated drama where a single, perfect young man was elevated to the status of a living god before his ultimate, tragic end. Imagine the chosen youth, selected for his flawless physical beauty, intelligence, and grace. For an entire year, he lived a life of unimaginable luxury and adoration. He was adorned in the finest jewels, dressed in exquisite garments, and accompanied by a retinue of attendants who catered to his every whim. He was taught to play the flute, to sing, and to dance with captivating elegance, embodying Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, one of the most powerful and feared deities in the Aztec pantheon, god of the night sky, ancestral memory, and temptation. Everywhere he went, people would prostrate themselves before him, offering him gifts and adoration, treating him as a divine presence walking among them. He was allowed, even encouraged, to take 4 beautiful young women as his companions, representing different goddesses, further cementing his temporary godhood. This year of living as a divine being must have been an intoxicating experience, a dream-like existence unlike any other, yet constantly overshadowed by the chilling knowledge of his predetermined fate. As the Toxcatl festival approached, the atmosphere would gradually shift, the reverence subtly tinged with a growing solemnity. 20 days before the main ceremony, his divine companions would separate from him. 5 days before, his lavish retinue would depart. He would then begin a solemn procession, playing his flute and breaking it at each of the 5 designated stations, a symbolic shedding of his mortal ties and a descent into the realm of sacrifice. This slow, deliberate stripping away of his earthly honors heightened the tension and underscored the sacredness of his impending transformation. On the day of the festival, he would be led to a small temple, often built specifically for this purpose, where the final act of this profound drama would unfold. The moment of his execution was precise and chillingly ritualistic. He would ascend the temple steps, not dragged or forced, but walking willingly, a final act of devotion and submission. At the summit, waiting for him, would be a priest prepared to perform the heart extraction, much like the ceremonies for Huitzilopochtli. This heart, offered from a body that had housed the divine for a year, was considered an offering of unparalleled potency and significance. It was the ultimate gift, a voluntary return of the divine essence to the cosmos, reinforcing the delicate balance between man and God. The profound significance of this ritual and its interruption highlights a tragic turning point in Aztec history. It was during the Toxcatl festival in 1520 that Pedro de Alvarado, one of Hernán Cortés's lieutenants, committed what became known as the Toxcatl massacre. While Cortés was away, Alvarado, fearing an Aztec uprising during this massive, highly charged religious gathering, ordered his men to attack the unarmed Aztec nobility and priests who were dancing in the temple courtyard. This horrific act, carried out during one of the most sacred moments of their year, shattered the fragile peace between the Spanish and the Aztecs. The massacre, rather than preventing an uprising, ignited the fury of the Aztec people, leading to a full-scale rebellion and ultimately contributing to the downfall of Tenochtitlan. The interruption of the Toxcatl ceremony, a ritual symbolizing renewal and divine continuity, with an act of unprovoked violence, perfectly encapsulated the devastating clash of two vastly different worlds, each unable to comprehend the other's deep-rooted beliefs and sacred practices. It underscores how profoundly cultural and religious misunderstandings can lead to catastrophic consequences. Even more terrifying than the silent ascent of the youth for Toxcatl was the brutal spectacle of the gladiatorial sacrifice, known as Tlacaxipuelistli, a ceremony that combined ritual combat with a chillingly predetermined outcome. This was no fair fight, but a meticulously choreographed dance of death designed to honor the gods and showcase Aztec military might. Imagine a grand arena, often a circular stone platform with a central stone, pulsating with the raw energy of thousands of onlookers. To them, this was not mere entertainment, but a profound religious event. The star of this macabre show was almost always a captured enemy warrior, a symbol of Aztec dominance and martial prowess. This captive, esteemed for his bravery in battle, would be stripped of his armor and weapons and then tethered by a long rope to the central stone, severely limiting his movement. His opponents, a series of heavily armed Aztec champions, often the very warriors who had captured him. The captive, despite his bravery, was deliberately handicapped. While his Aztec opponents wielded full-sized, obsidian-edged macuahudal swords, the captive was given only a wooden club adorned with feathers, or perhaps a sword with blunted obsidian blades, ensuring that any resistance he put up was purely symbolic. This was never a contest of skill or strength. It was a ritual of humiliation and sacrifice. The captive warrior, despite his inevitable doom, was expected to fight bravely, to demonstrate his courage and honor even in the face of certain death. His valiant yet futile struggle was considered a form of offering in itself, reflecting the Aztec belief that the bravery of a fallen warrior imbued his heart with special potency for the gods. The crowd would roar, not with bloodlust, but with a complex mix of reverence and awe at the spectacle of a brave soul meeting his sacred end. Each parry, each desperate lunge from the captive, served to heighten the drama and underscore the ritual's profound significance within their cosmic framework. As the battle progressed, the captive, weakened and wounded, would eventually fall. The fight would then culminate when the champion priest, often dressed in the flayed skin of a previous sacrificial victim, delivered the final, fatal blow. This was typically achieved through a ceremonial heart extraction, mirroring the practices seen in other sacrifices. The heart, still beating, would be raised to the heavens, a poignant offering to the insatiable deities. The body would then be dismembered, parts consumed by high-ranking priests and warriors in what was viewed as a sacred act of communion, allowing them to absorb the bravery and spirit of the fallen foe. This ritual served multiple purposes. It was a terrifying display of power to subjugate conquered peoples, a profound act of religious devotion, and a reinforcement of the Aztec warrior ethos. It was a stark reminder that even the most valiant enemies were ultimately destined for the sacrificial stone, their lives serving as conduits for divine sustenance in a brutal yet deeply spiritual world. Beyond the dramatic heart extractions and gladiatorial contests, the Aztec world was equally shaped by a series of aquatic sacrifices, particularly the chilling practice of drowning victims in sacred springs, cenotes, and lakes to appease powerful water deities. This was not a random act of violence, but a meticulously planned ritual deeply interwoven with their agricultural cycles and the critical need for effective water management in a land often prone to both devastating floods and prolonged droughts. Imagine the serene, almost mystical setting of a glistening spring, or the still, dark waters of a cenote, which the Aztecs believed were direct conduits to the underworld and the abodes of their gods. These places, beautiful yet foreboding, became the stage for offerings to deities like Chalchutlicue, the goddess of lakes, rivers, and the embodiment of active water, and of course, the ever-present Tlaloc, the rain god whose wrath or benevolence dictated the very survival of their crops. The selection of victims for these water-based rituals varied, but often included children, as previously discussed in relation to Tlaloc, whose tears were seen as a potent precursor to rain. However, adults, particularly those associated with water or fertility, could also be chosen. The method of sacrifice was straightforward but terrifying. The victims were deliberately drowned. This act was not merely about death, it was about communion, a symbolic return to the watery essence that sustained life. The Aztecs believed that by offering a life to the water, they were replenishing the very source from which all life flowed, ensuring abundant rainfall for their maize fields, healthy fish in their lakes, and safe passage for their canoes along vital waterways. The drowned body was seen as a direct messenger to the gods of the watery realms, carrying the pleas and gratitude of the living. These drowning sacrifices were particularly significant during times of intense environmental stress, such as prolonged dry spells when the community faced the existential threat of famine, or during periods of excessive flooding when they sought to appease the angry waters. The ritual would often be accompanied by elaborate processions, hymns, and offerings of precious goods thrown into the water alongside the human victims. For example, during festivals dedicated to Chalchudlaqu, large gatherings would take place around water sources, amplifying the collective plea for her favor. The offerings were not just about appeasement, they were also a desperate form of hydraulic engineering, a spiritual attempt to control the unpredictable forces of nature that governed their lives. The Aztecs, with their impressive aqueducts and Chinampas floating gardens, were master hydrologists, yet they understood that ultimately, control over water lay with the divine. Thus, these sacrifices became the ultimate expression of their dependence and their profound spiritual connection to the environment. The sacrifice of a life to the water was a deep, if terrifying, act of faith, a desperate hope that the gods would look favorably upon their devotion and ensure the continuation of life in their fragile, water-dependent world. While the drowning rituals appealed for water in a more direct, symbolic sense, the Aztecs also practiced an infinitely more graphic and haunting plea for rain and fertility, the arrow sacrifice. This ritual, particularly associated with the god Xipe-Totec, but also performed in other agricultural contexts, involved victims being stretched taut on a wooden frame and then systematically shot with arrows until their lifeblood flowed out. For modern observers, this image is almost unbearable, the slow, agonizing death by a flurry of arrows, each striking home, yet none immediately fatal. But for the Aztecs, the sight of blood spurting and dripping from the victim was not merely a gruesome spectacle. It was a profound, visually potent prayer, a sacred representation of rain falling upon the parched earth, fertilizing it and bringing forth new life. The victim's blood was seen as the most vital offering, a direct infusion of life force that would nurture the soil and ensure a bountiful harvest. Imagine the ceremonial context. The victim, often a captive warrior or a selected individual, would be bound securely to a large wooden frame, sometimes in the shape of a cross or a star, elevating them before the assembled community. Priests and warriors armed with bows and arrows would take their positions. The arrows themselves might have been specially prepared with blunted tips or designed to pierce without immediately killing, prolonging the flow of blood. As the arrows struck, the blood would begin to flow, forming rivulets down the victim's body and onto the ground below. This was the critical moment, the visual manifestation of their fervent prayer. The crimson liquid soaking into the earth symbolized the life-giving rain permeating the soil, urging the ground to yield its vital crops. Each arrow was a plea, and each drop of blood a promise of future abundance. The slow, protracted nature of the death was intentional. It was about the continuous flow, the deliberate outpouring of life, mirroring the steady, nourishing drizzle that brought their fields to life. The arrow sacrifice was often performed during specific agricultural festivals, particularly those dedicated to fertility deities or marking the planting and harvesting seasons. These were times of critical importance to an agrarian society where crop failure meant starvation. The collective tension and hope during these ceremonies must have been palpable. As the victim's life ebbed away, the community would chant, pray, and observe, deeply connected to the ritual's purpose. After the victim succumbed to blood loss, the body would be taken down, and often the heart would then be extracted as a final offering, completing the cycle of sacrifice. This practice underscores the Aztec belief that profound acts of giving, even those involving immense suffering, were necessary to maintain the cosmic order and secure the very necessities of life. It further illustrates how their rituals were not merely symbolic reenactments but direct, active interventions in the natural world, a desperate attempt to influence the divine forces that govern their existence. Beyond the excruciating agony of the arrow sacrifice, another truly terrifying and visually overwhelming ritual was the fire ceremony, where victims were cast into massive bonfires. This was a direct, visceral offering to Tecutli, the god of fire, day, and heat, a deity whose power was both life-giving and terrifyingly destructive. Imagine the pulsating heat emanating from a colossal bonfire, its flames reaching skyward, casting dancing shadows across the faces of the assembled crowd. The air would be thick with smoke and the rhythmic chanting of priests, creating an almost hypnotic atmosphere. Victims, often warriors or individuals designated for this specific fate, would be brought to the edge of the pyre. To mitigate their struggle and perhaps to render them more docile for the horrifying ordeal, it is believed they were often heavily drugged with narcotics or hallucinogens, inducing a state of trance or semi-consciousness. This would numb their physical pain and mental anguish, making them compliant participants in their own immolation. The act itself was swift and brutal. The drugged victims were thrown into the heart of the raging flames, not to be consumed entirely by the fire, but for a brief, agonizing moment of exposure. This initial contact with the inferno was seen as a purifying, transformative experience, preparing their spirit for the ultimate offering. The screams and the sudden surge of smoke would have been an unforgettable, horrifying spectacle for those witnessing it. Yet the ritual was far from over. Before the fire could claim them entirely, the victims were then quickly extracted from the flames using long hooks or poles, their bodies seared and blistered but still alive. This chilling retrieval was not an act of mercy, but a necessary step to complete the sacrifice in the prescribed manner. The goal was not cremation, but a terrifying combination of fire and bladed sacrifice methods. Once pulled from the bonfire, still breathing but likely in unimaginable pain and shock, their bodies would be laid upon the sacrificial stone. It was there that the final, gruesome act unfolded. The still beating heart would be swiftly cut from their chest, typically by a priest using an obsidian blade. This combination of fire and blade was considered an exceptionally potent offering to Tecutli, symbolizing ultimate devotion and the transfer of vital life force through the most extreme means. The heart, having endured the agony of fire, was seen as imbued with immense power, a direct conduit of energy to the fiery deity. This ritual was often performed during festivals dedicated to fire, particularly during the new fire ceremony or celebrations marking the end of cycles, reinforcing the themes of death, renewal, and the sheer power of the elements. It underscored the Aztec belief that profound transformations and powerful blessings often required an equally profound and terrifying price, a testament to their unyielding commitment to appeasing the gods who controlled the very forces of their existence. From the agonizing deaths by fire to the chilling heart extractions, the Aztecs presented their gods with the most profound offerings imaginable. Yet one ritual, in its sheer scale and psychological impact, stands as a silent monument to their power and their unique connection to life and death, the Tizomplantli. Imagine walking into the heart of Tenochtitlan, the grand Aztec capital, and encountering not just one, but rows upon rows of human skulls meticulously arranged on towering wooden racks. This wasn't merely a macabre display, it was a potent symbol, a chilling testament to their military might, their religious devotion, and a stark warning to any who dared defy their empire. This practice, known as the Tees Ampantli or skull rack, involved the public exhibition of thousands of skulls, often those of captured warriors and sacrificial victims, cleaned of flesh and then impaled onto horizontal wooden poles fitted into massive vertical posts. The sheer number of skulls on display would have been staggering, creating an unforgettable and deeply unsettling impression on all who beheld it. The largest and most famous Tees Ampantli was located near the Templo Mayor, the Aztecs' most sacred temple, right in the bustling ceremonial center of their capital. The psychological impact of the Tees Ampantli on both the Aztec populace and their subjugated neighbors cannot be overstated. For the Aztecs, especially the ruling elite and the warrior class, it served as a powerful symbol of their military successes, a visible sign of their god's favor, and a constant reminder of the sacrifices necessary to maintain their cosmic order. Each skull represented a victory, a captive taken, a life offered to sustain the sun and the universe. It was a source of immense pride and reinforced their belief in their divine mandate to conquer and rule. For the conquered peoples forced to witness these displays, the message was clear and terrifying. Resist the Aztec Empire, and this could be your fate. It was an overwhelming display of power designed to instill fear, discourage rebellion, and ensure compliance. The silent, eyeless sockets of thousands of skulls served as a chilling deterrent, a constant, tangible reminder of the consequences of opposition. It was psychological warfare on a grand scale, designed to crush the spirit of any potential adversary before a single battle was fought. The construction of these monumental skull racks was an engineering feat in itself. Archaeological discoveries, particularly around the Templo Mayor, have shed light on the intricate methods used. The skulls weren't just haphazardly piled. They were drilled at the temples and then threaded onto long, slender wooden poles, which in turn were supported by larger, sturdy vertical posts set into stone foundations. These structures were built to last, designed to proudly display their gruesome cargo for extended periods, enduring the elements and the passage of time. The sheer labor involved in preparing thousands of skulls, cleaning them, drilling them, and then meticulously arranging them on the racks speaks volumes about the Aztecs' organizational capabilities and their unwavering commitment to these rituals. It was a systematic, disciplined approach to what for them was a sacred duty, not just a gruesome display. Further adding to the mystique of the Tees Ampantli was the practice of carving the skulls into masks after they had decomposed on the racks. Once a skull had weathered for a period, its bone would be cleaned and sometimes even polished. Then, skilled Aztec artisans would carve intricate designs into the bone, transforming the once human remains into a mask or effigy. These carved skulls were often adorned with shells, obsidian, or other precious materials, elevating them beyond mere battlefield trophies into sacred objects. These skull masks might have been used in further rituals, worn by priests, or placed in temples as additional offerings to the gods. This transformation from a symbol of death and warning into an object of beauty and further religious significance underscores the Aztecs' cyclical view of life, death, and rebirth. For them, death was not an end but a transformation, and even the remains of the sacrifice could continue to serve a sacred purpose, perpetuating the cosmic cycle. The Tees Ampantli, therefore, was far more than a simple display of death. It was a dynamic, evolving ritual that encompassed military might, psychological warfare, sophisticated engineering, and profound spiritual belief, all rooted in their unique understanding of the interconnectedness of life, death, and the divine. Even more controversial and perhaps the most viscerally unsettling aspect of Aztec ritual life for many modern observers is the debated practice of cannibalism. While the imagery of skulls on a tease apparently is gruesome, the thought of actually consuming human flesh crosses an entirely different boundary. For the Aztecs, however, this was not a matter of survival or starvation, but a deeply symbolic and religiously charged act, one that aimed to absorb the very essence, the vital force of the sacrifice. This ritual consumption was primarily associated with specific ceremonial contexts, particularly after certain sacrifices, where parts of the victim, most notably the heart and sometimes other muscle tissues, were eaten by high-ranking priests, warriors, and members of the elite. This was not a widespread dietary practice but a sacred communion, a way to internalize the power and spiritual energy of the person who had been offered to the gods. It was believed that by consuming the flesh of a brave warrior, for example, one could absorb their courage and strength, or that by consuming parts of a god impersonator, one could partake in the divine essence of the deity itself. The religious symbolism behind these acts was profound. Many of the sacrificed individuals, particularly the god impersonators who lived for a year embodying a deity before their sacrifice, were seen as having become the living embodiment of the god. When they were ritually killed, their bodies were considered holy, infused with divine power. To consume a part of such a person was therefore not to eat another human in a mundane sense, but to ingest the divine, to establish a direct, intimate connection with the gods. It was a form of extreme communion, a way for the most privileged members of society to literally incorporate the sacred into their own bodies, thereby strengthening their spiritual connection and reinforcing their status within the cosmic order. For example, after the sacrifice of a captive warrior in a gladiatorial combat, portions of his flesh might be cooked and shared, especially his thighs, which were considered symbolic of strength. This was a way of honoring the warrior's bravery and transferring his vigor to the Aztec elite, a direct absorption of merit and power. However, the scale and significance of Aztec ritual cannibalism remains a subject of intense debate among historians and archaeologists. Early Spanish accounts often sensationalize the practice, using it to justify their conquest and portray the Aztecs as barbaric. These conquistador narratives portrayed widespread, almost routine cannibalism, fueling a negative image that persisted for centuries. Modern scholarship, utilizing archaeological evidence, textual analysis, and a deeper understanding of Mesoamerican religious practices, presents a more nuanced and complex picture. While there is undeniable evidence that ritual consumption did occur, particularly in highly specific sacred contexts, it was far from a common or widespread dietary practice. It was limited to certain elite groups and specific ceremonial occasions, making it a rare and highly symbolic act rather than a means of sustenance. Archaeological findings, such as cut marks on human bones indicating disarticulation and defleshing, often found in ritual deposits near temples, corroborate the historical accounts of ritualistic handling of human remains. However, the interpretation of these findings, and whether they specifically confirm widespread consumption or merely post-sacrificial processing, is where the debate lies. Scholars continue to analyze these patterns to differentiate between trophy-taking, ritual display, and actual consumption. The prevailing view among many experts today is that while ritual cannibalism did happen, it was highly circumscribed, deeply symbolic, and far less pervasive than early European accounts suggested. It was a practice rooted in a complex spiritual belief system, a way to manage the flow of sacred energy and maintain the delicate balance between the human and divine realms, rather than a simple act of savagery. Understanding this distinction is crucial to comprehending the full spectrum of Aztec ritual life, even its most confronting aspects. While the grand ceremonies of heart extraction and gladiatorial combat often involved the sacrifice of others, A profound and omnipresent aspect of Aztec ritual life was autosacrifice, or bloodletting, performed by individuals upon themselves. This wasn't about ending a life, but about offering a part of one's own vital essence to the gods, a direct, intimate, and continuous act of devotion that permeated all levels of society, from the highest tlatoni or emperor down to common farmers and artisans. Imagine the quiet intensity of a personal moment, perhaps within a temple courtyard or even the privacy of one's home, where an Aztec noble would sit in contemplation, preparing to make a direct offering to the divine. The tools for this sacred act were often humble yet potent: sharp obsidian blades, stingray spines, meticulously crafted bone needles, or even agave thorns. These weren't instruments of torture, but conduits for spiritual connection, each carefully chosen for its sharpness and symbolic significance. The act of bloodletting was not random. Specific body parts were targeted for their symbolic significance and their perceived connection to vital life force. The ears, often pierced multiple times, were seen as pathways for divine messages and as a receptacle for spiritual energy. The tongue, central to speech and prayer, was considered a powerful site for offering words and devotion directly to the gods through blood. Perhaps most strikingly, and certainly most painfully, blood was frequently drawn from the genitals, the penis for men, and sometimes the labia or clitoris for women. This was an exceptionally potent act, directly linking the life-giving fluids of human reproduction with the divine forces of creation and fertility. The very act of procreation was seen as a divine gift, and offering blood from these areas was a profound way to acknowledge and reciprocate that gift, particularly to deities associated with fertility, agriculture, and the continuation of life. The blood, whether from the ear, tongue, or genitals, was allowed to drip onto strips of paper which were then burned as offerings, the smoke carrying the essence of the sacrifice heavenward, a direct communication with the gods. This practice of auto-sacrifice served multiple purposes. Firstly, it was an act of personal piety, a way for individuals to directly engage with their deities, express gratitude, and seek divine favor for themselves, their families, and their community. It was believed that shedding one's own blood, especially from such vital areas, was the purest and most heartfelt form of offering, demonstrating true devotion and humility before the gods. Secondly, it was a fundamental aspect of maintaining cosmic balance. Just as the sun required the tonally from human hearts to continue its journey, the broader spectrum of deities required regular infusions of human blood to sustain the universe and ensure the continuity of life. The daily, personal acts of bloodletting by thousands of individuals contributed to a collective pool of vital energy, reinforcing the delicate cosmic order. Thirdly, it served as a powerful tool for self-purification and spiritual preparation, especially before major rituals, battles, or significant life events. By shedding their own blood, individuals cleansed themselves of impurities and opened themselves up to divine influence, preparing their minds and bodies for sacred tasks. The visual impact of this ritual, though often personal, would also have been evident in public settings. Priests, in particular, were known for extreme forms of auto-sacrifice, often stringing long cords through multiple piercings in their tongues or ears, allowing the blood to flow freely as they paraded or performed religious duties. Imagine the sight of an Aztec priest with a rope visibly threaded through his pierced earlobes, stained with his own fresh blood as he presided over a ceremony. Such displays would have underscored the immense devotion and spiritual authority of the religious elite, visually communicating their profound connection to the divine. This constant, pervasive shedding of personal blood highlights a fundamental difference in worldview. For the Aztecs, blood was not simply a biological fluid, but a sacred, life-giving essence, a direct link to the divine, and its offering, whether from oneself or another, was the ultimate act of devotion in a world where every aspect of existence was intricately woven with the supernatural. While many Aztec rituals involved direct, often brutal, sacrifices, another profound ceremony, the Volador ceremony or the Dance of the Flyers, offered a more symbolic yet equally perilous offering to the cosmos. This breathtaking spectacle, though not always involving a fatal human sacrifice in the same vein as heart extractions, was incredibly dangerous and carried immense spiritual weight, embodying a captivating fusion of religious devotion, astronomical insight, and daredevil acrobatics. Imagine a colossal pole, sometimes towering over 100 feet into the sky, erected in the central plaza. This isn't just a tree trunk, it's a meticulously chosen and prepared sacred axis mundi, connecting the earthly realm with the heavens. At its summit stood a rotating wooden frame from which 4 intrepid voladors or flyers, clad in elaborate, vibrant costumes resembling birds, would suspend themselves by ropes wrapped around their waists. They would climb the pole using pegs or notches, their ascent a slow, deliberate performance in itself, building tension among the awestruck onlookers below. The ceremony, rich with cosmological meaning, was a living prayer to the sun god, rain deities, and fertility gods, particularly Xipe-Totec. The 4 voladors, representing the 4 cardinal directions and the 4 elements, would launch themselves backward into the void, descending in wide, slowly spiraling circles, their descent synchronized with the mesmerizing, almost hypnotic beats of drums and the haunting melodies of flutes played by a 5th participant perched precariously atop the pole on the rotating platform. As they spun, the ropes precisely measured would unwind, causing them to descend 13 times each for a total of 52 rotations. This number was no accident. 52 held immense significance in the Aztec calendar, representing the 52-year cycle of their calendar round, a period that, as discussed before, culminated in the terrifying New Fire ceremony. Each rotation of the voladors therefore symbolized a year passing in the cosmic cycle, a visual representation of time unfolding and renewing itself with each perilous spin. The danger inherent in this ritual was palpable. A single misstep, a frayed rope, or a moment of lost concentration could lead to a catastrophic fall from dizzying heights. Yet, for the Aztecs, the risk was an integral part of the offering. The courage, skill, and discipline required of the voladors were themselves offerings to the gods, demonstrating humanity's dedication to maintaining cosmic balance. The ritual was performed on significant dates, often to mark agricultural cycles, such as planting or harvest, or to appeal for rain, embodying the hope that the gods would look favorably upon such a profound act of devotion. The spectacle was not only religious but also a powerful communal event, drawing thousands of onlookers who would gaze skyward, their eyes following the spiraling figures, their hearts undoubtedly pounding with a mixture of fear and awe. While the modern Volador ceremony, still performed by some indigenous groups in Mexico and Central America, no longer involves human sacrifice, historical accounts suggest that in Aztec times, it sometimes began with a chilling act, a potential human sacrifice at the base of the pole, or even at its summit before the flyers began their descent. This initial offering, if it occurred, would have imbued the entire ceremony with an even deeper layer of sacred intensity, linking the symbolic flight of the voladors directly to the literal offering of life. The blood of the sacrificed, soaking into the earth at the base of the sacred pole, would have fertilized the ground both literally and spiritually, consecuting the entire structure and the subsequent aerial dance. This initial sacrifice, though not always present in every iteration of the ceremony, served to reinforce the gravity of the ritual, transforming the pole into a direct conduit for divine communication and consecrating the space for the dangerous celestial dance that followed. The Volador ceremony, therefore, stands as a testament to the Aztecs' multi-faceted approach to appeasing their deities, combining symbolic and potentially literal blood offerings with a dazzling display of human skill and courage, all woven into the intricate tapestry of their cosmic understanding. Beyond the aerial ballets of the Volador ceremony and the chilling personal acts of autosacrifice, lay a series of rituals that showcased Aztec power and religious fervor on an almost unimaginable scale, the temple dedication sacrifices. These were not mere offerings but monumental events, public declarations of devotion and imperial might, designed to imbue new structures with sacred energy. Imagine the colossal effort involved in constructing a massive temple like the Templo Maya, the spiritual heart of Tenochtitlan. Years of painstaking labor, countless resources, and the collective will of an empire went into raising these stone giants. But for the Aztecs, the physical construction was only half the battle. A building, no matter how grand, was just inert stone until it was consecrated through the most potent of offerings, human life. These dedication ceremonies were believed to literally infuse the temple with tonali, the divine life force, transforming it from a mere edifice into a living, breathing conduit between the human and divine realms, a place where the gods could reside and their power could manifest. The scale of these dedication sacrifices could be truly staggering, reaching their terrifying zenith during the consecration of the expanded Templo Maya in the year 1487. This was not a single, isolated event, but a multi-day ceremony, a chilling testament to the Aztecs' commitment to their gods. Accounts from various sources, including early Spanish chroniclers and subsequent historical interpretations, paint a picture of an event of unprecedented magnitude. While precise numbers remain a subject of fervent debate among historians and archaeologists, estimates for the number of victims sacrificed during these 4 days range from a conservative 4,000 to a staggering 80,000. Such a wide range speaks to the difficulty of accurately quantifying events from distant pasts, especially those viewed through the often biased lens of conquerors. However, even the lower estimates represent an immense, almost incomprehensible loss of life, a logistical undertaking that required meticulous planning and execution on an epic scale. Consider the immense logistical challenge of processing thousands and potentially tens of thousands of human sacrifices over just 4 days. This would have required a highly organized and efficient system. Long lines of victims, primarily captured warriors from conquered territories, would have been marched up the steep steps of the Templo Maya, where priests working in shifts would perform the heart extractions. The bodies would then need to be swiftly dispatched down the temple steps, likely rolled or carried, to make way for the next victims. This wasn't a chaotic frenzy, but a precise, ritualistic assembly line of death, designed to maximize efficiency for a sacred purpose. The sheer volume of blood that would have flowed down the temple steps would have been immense, literally painting the sacred stone with life and death, an offering on a scale rarely seen in human history. For the Aztecs, this wasn't an act of wanton cruelty but a supreme offering, a necessary and sacred duty to their gods, particularly Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and sun, and Tlaloc, the rain god, both of whom were honored at the Templo Maya. The dedication of such a significant structure, especially one built to honor the life-giving sun and rain, demanded an equally significant outpouring of life. It was believed that the more lives offered, the stronger the connection between the temple and the divine, thus ensuring the continued prosperity, military success, and cosmic balance of the entire empire. This act served as a powerful message to both the Aztec people and their tributary states. Their empire was divinely favored, incredibly powerful, and its very existence was sustained through these profound, terrifying acts of devotion. The dedication of the Templo Maya remains a chilling, yet powerful, symbol of the Aztecs' unyielding belief system and their willingness to sacrifice on a scale that continues to confound and fascinate us centuries later. While many Aztec rituals culminated in a preordained death, others revolved around the concept of ritual combat and capture, epitomized by the fascinating and often misunderstood flowery wars or Xochitl. These were not wars of conquest in the traditional sense, aimed at seizing territory or resources, but rather meticulously arranged battles with a specific, deeply religious purpose: to acquire captives for sacrifice. Imagine the Aztec Triple Alliance Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan negotiating with their neighboring city-states or rivals, not for peace or land, but for the opportunity to engage in a controlled ceremonial conflict. These agreements would establish a defined battlefield, often a symbolic sacred space, where warriors from both sides would meet, not in a chaotic free-for-all, but in a highly ritualized engagement. The objective for the Aztecs was not to obliterate the enemy, but to wound and capture them alive, for a living, breathing captive was the ultimate offering to the gods, especially Huitzilopochtli, the sun and war deity. This unique form of warfare highlights a profound military-religious complex at the heart of Aztec society, where the battlefield was as much an altar as a place of strategic conquest. The concept of glory for an Aztec warrior was intrinsically linked to capture rather than outright killing. While a warrior could gain renown for bravery and skill in general combat, the highest honors were reserved for those who could subdue an enemy and bring them back alive for sacrifice. Imagine a young warrior, his heart pounding, engaging in hand-to-hand combat. His aim would be to disable his opponent, perhaps by striking a limb or disorienting them, allowing him to grab and bind them before they could be dispatched by another. This required immense skill, strength, and precision. A captured enemy was a tangible symbol of not only the warrior's prowess, but also the Aztec Empire's divine favor, as the gods had presumably allowed the capture to occur. This emphasis on capture transformed the battlefield into a proving ground for spiritual devotion as much as military might. It shaped their weaponry, favoring clubs and bladed weapons designed to wound and incapacitate rather than immediately kill, and influenced their combat tactics, which often prioritized encirclement and individual duels aimed at taking prisoners. The Flowery Wars served multiple critical functions within the Aztec worldview. Firstly, they provided a steady supply of sacrificial victims, ensuring the continuous feeding of the sun and the maintenance of cosmic balance without the exhaustive expenditure of resources and manpower required for full-scale wars of conquest. Secondly, they acted as a rigorous training ground for Aztec warriors, allowing them to hone their combat skills and develop discipline in a controlled environment. Young soldiers could gain experience and prove their worth, rising through the ranks by successfully taking captives. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, they served as a constant, ritualized display of power and religious piety to both internal and external audiences. Participating in and winning a Flowery War reinforced the Aztec Triple Alliance's military superiority and their strong connection to the gods, sending a clear message to tributary states and unconquered neighbors about the futility of resistance and the divine mandate of the Aztec Empire. The defeated side, while providing victims, often found themselves maintaining a ritualistic relationship with the Aztecs, acknowledging their religious and military dominance within a complex web of alliances and subjugations. However, despite their ritualized nature, the Flowery Wars were far from bloodless charades. They were deadly serious engagements where warriors on both sides faced real injury, disfigurement, and death. The goal for the Aztecs was to capture, but the reality was that many would be killed in the process, and even those captured faced the terrifying prospect of the sacrificial stone. For the defeated side, participating in a Flowery War meant risking their lives and providing victims for their ritualistic execution, a grim testament to the power dynamics at play. The distinction between a Flowery War and a war of conquest could also blur, particularly as the Aztec Empire expanded and its need for victims increased. What might begin as a ritualized skirmish could escalate into a full-blown invasion if the tribute of captives was not met or if political circumstances shifted. This dual nature, being both a sacred ceremony and a deadly military exercise, underscores the intricate and often brutal logic that governed the Aztec world. A logic where war, religion, and the very sustenance of the cosmos were inextricably intertwined, flowing into a single, terrifying current of purpose. While many Aztec sacrifices involved sharp blades, burning fires, or drowning waters, a far less common but chillingly effective method of ritual killing was death by crushing. This method, though not as widely documented as heart extraction, served a specific ceremonial purpose, often linked to deities associated with the earth's destructive power or the overwhelming force of nature. Imagine a large, heavy stone, perhaps carved with the grim visage of a deity, suspended above a designated sacrificial slab. The atmosphere would be heavy with dread, the air thick with the scent of copal as the chosen victim was brought forward. This was not a quick death. It was a slow, agonizing process designed to maximize the suffering and the offering of life force. The sheer weight and gravitational force involved conveyed an undeniable sense of overwhelming power, a direct manifestation of the divine will. The method conveyed an undeniable sense of overwhelming, inescapable power, a direct manifestation of the divine will. This brutal form of sacrifice was primarily associated with gods like Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, whose domains included fate, destiny, earthly destruction, and the raw, untamed forces of nature. As a deity of both creation and destruction, Tezcatlipoca symbolized the crushing weight of fate and the inevitability of the earthly cycle. The act of crushing a human life beneath a massive stone would have been a visceral representation of his immense power, his ability to grind life to dust. The offering of a life through this method would serve as a profound acknowledgement of Tezcatlipoca's inescapable dominion over human existence and the fragility of life under his watchful eye. The victim's final moments, compressed and broken, would symbolize the overwhelming force of the divine, a humbling reminder of humanity's subservience to powers far greater than themselves. Another deity potentially associated with such a crushing ritual could be Coatlicue, the fearsome earth goddess, mother of Huitzilopochtli. As a goddess representing the earth itself, with all its fertile and destructive aspects, a crushing sacrifice might have been seen as a return to the earth, a violent embrace by the very ground that sustained life. The weight of the stone symbolizing the earth's unyielding embrace, taking back what it had given in a brutal cycle of life and death. The ceremonial context for crushing sacrifices would likely have been rare, possibly reserved for specific calendrical rites or as a desperate measure during times of extreme crisis, such as prolonged famines, devastating earthquakes, or widespread disease outbreaks. In such dire circumstances, where the very forces of nature seemed to be conspiring against humanity, a crushing sacrifice would be seen as the ultimate plea for divine intervention, a desperate attempt to appease the overwhelming powers that threaten to crush the entire civilization. The public execution of a victim in such a manner would serve as a terrifying object lesson, a stark reminder of the gods' wrath and their capacity for absolute destruction. It would reinforce the community's dependence on the deities and underscore the importance of maintaining cosmic balance through any means necessary. The sheer visual impact and the extended suffering of the victim would instill a deep fear and reverence, ensuring that the message of divine power and human vulnerability was indelibly etched into the collective consciousness of the Aztec people. This ritual, though infrequent, casts a dark shadow over the Aztec religious landscape, highlighting their willingness to plumb the depths of suffering in their relentless pursuit of divine favor and cosmic order. From the spectacle of gladiatorial combat and the horror of crushing sacrifices, we now turn to a ritual that, while less visually dramatic, evokes a profound sense of claustrophobia and desperation, the practice of burying victims alive. This chilling method of sacrifice served a distinct purpose within the Aztec worldview, primarily as an offering to earth deities, especially during agricultural festivals, and was intimately connected to their concepts of fertility and renewal. Imagine the deep, rich soil of a freshly tilled field, a place promising life and abundance, yet also capable of swallowing all that falls into its embrace. For the Aztecs, the earth was not merely inert ground but a living, breathing entity, a goddess in her own right, demanding sustenance to continue yielding her bounty. The ultimate offering to this insatiable earth was a life returned directly to her heart, interred while still pulsating with the vital force. These live burials were profoundly tied to agricultural cycles. During planting seasons, particularly before sowing the crucial maize, or during times of drought threatening the harvest, the Aztecs would offer human lives directly to the earth. The victim, often a captive or a person specifically chosen for this grim honor, would be led to a designated spot, perhaps a pit dug within a sacred field or at the base of a newly constructed temple. Unlike the swift blades or scorching fires, this method involved a slow, suffocating descent into oblivion. The earth would gradually reclaim the life given to it, symbolizing a direct exchange, a human life for the promise of a bountiful harvest. For the Aztecs, this was a logical, albeit terrifying, act of reciprocity. Just as a seed had to be buried and die to germinate and bring forth new life, so too did a human life have to be given back to the earth to ensure its continued fertility. The victims' last breaths, their struggles, their very essence were seen as sinking into the earth, nourishing it and imbuing it with renewed vitality. The primary recipient of these sacrifices would have been deities like Tlaloltecutli, the monstrous earth goddess, often depicted with a gaping maw ready to devour the dead, or Coatlicue, the mother goddess, who represented both the generative and destructive aspects of the earth. By offering a life directly to the soil, the Aztecs sought to appease these powerful entities, ensuring that the earth would remain fertile, that the rains would come, and that the crops would flourish. It was a direct, unfiltered prayer to the very ground beneath their feet, a desperate plea for the continuation of life. The silence accompanying such a ritual, broken only by the sounds of earth being shoveled and perhaps the muffled cries of the victim, would have been profoundly eerie, underscoring the solemnity and the finality of the offering. The lack of visible blood or dramatic spectacle, so common in other sacrifices, only amplified the quiet horror and the direct communion with the earth itself. The body, still alive, became a living seed planted within the earth to ensure the growth of the community. The selection of victims for live burials might have encompassed a range of individuals, from captured warriors to, in some instances, children or even individuals with physical deformities, who are sometimes seen as having a special connection to the earth and the underworld. The ritual reinforced the idea that human life was inherently linked to the cycles of nature, and that the sustenance of the community was dependent on these profound and often disturbing acts of reciprocation. This practice underscores the Aztec belief that every aspect of existence, from the sprouting of a corn stalk to the survival of the empire, was inextricably linked to the favor of the gods, and that no sacrifice, no matter how extreme, was too great to ensure the delicate balance of their world and the continuation of life from the earth's nurturing yet demanding embrace. While the live burials highlight the Aztecs' profound connection to the earth's nurturing power, another category of sacrifice delves into a significantly more fragmented and chilling practice: ritual dismemberment. This was not a random act of savagery, but a highly systematized and deeply symbolic ceremony where victims were meticulously dismembered and their body parts distributed to various temples or participants. Imagine, if you will, the conclusion of a major sacrifice, perhaps a heart extraction at the summit of a grand temple. The body, now lifeless, was not simply cast aside. Instead, it became the subject of a precise, ritualistic dissection, each section holding specific meaning and destined for a particular purpose within the complex web of Aztec cosmology. This ritual underscores the Aztec belief that even in death, the human body remained a powerful conduit for divine energy, and its components could be harnessed for various sacred ends. The primary recipient of these dismembered body parts was often a specific deity or a temple dedicated to that deity. For example, the head, revered as the seat of consciousness and the spiritual essence, was frequently destined for the Tes Ampantli, the skull rack, there to join the thousands of other skulls in a chilling display of imperial power and religious fervor. This act wasn't just about public display, it was also about offering the mind, the intellect, and the very identity of the sacrificed individual directly to the gods, signifying their complete surrender and dedication. Other parts held different symbolic weight. The limbs, particularly the arms and legs, often went to the warriors who had captured the victim in battle. This was a direct, tangible reward, a way for the warriors to literally partake in the spoils of their valor. Consuming these parts, as discussed previously in the context of ritual cannibalism, was believed to transfer the courage, strength, and prowess of the fallen warrior to the victor, providing a spiritual nourishment that strengthened the Aztec military and solidified its dominance. This consumption was not a mundane meal, it was a sacred communion, a process of absorbing the vital essence of a brave foe. Beyond the head and limbs, other organs and tissues also found their ritualistic destinations. The liver, for example, was sometimes consumed, believed to be a source of strength and vitality. The blood, as we've seen, was collected and offered in various ways, painted onto idols or allowed to soak into the earth as a potent fertilizer. Even the skin, as exemplified by the rituals of Zyp-Totuk, was carefully flayed and worn by priests, symbolizing the shedding of the old and the renewal of life. This systematic distribution of body parts highlights the Aztecs' meticulous attention to detail in their religious practices, where every aspect of the sacrifice held profound meaning and contributed to the overall maintenance of cosmic order. It also showcases their highly segmented view of the human body, not as a single, indivisible entity, but as a collection of powerful components, each possessing its own unique spiritual properties. The distribution of these body parts also served to reinforce the social and hierarchical structures of Aztec society. The warrior who captured a noble enemy gained immense prestige and the right to consume certain parts of the body, elevating his status within the military elite. Priests, by partaking in the most sacred organs, reinforced their spiritual authority and their direct connection to the divine. This ritualistic sharing transformed the body of the sacrificed victim into a distributed offering, with different elements nourishing different aspects of Aztec society and different deities within their pantheon. It was a complex system of spiritual economics where the ultimate currency was life itself, meticulously divided and allocated to feed the gods and strengthen the empire. This practice, therefore, was far more than just a brutal act. It was a sophisticated theological statement, a physical manifestation of their interconnected world, where everything, even the dismembered remains of a human being, served a sacred purpose within the grand design of the cosmos. From the meticulous dismemberment of sacrificial victims, we shift our focus to a ritual that was both a brutal sport and a profound religious ceremony, the sacred ballgame sacrifices. Imagine a grand stone court shaped like a capital letter I, its high walls echoing with the thud of a solid rubber ball and the cheers of a captivated audience. This wasn't merely a game, it was a deadly serious ritual, a cosmic reenactment of the eternal struggle between light and darkness, life and death. The Mesoamerican ball game, known by various names such as Ulamaliztli in Nahuatl, was played across ancient Mexico for millennia, but for the Aztecs it took on an intensely sacrificial dimension. The ball court itself was considered a sacred space, a microcosm of the universe where the movement of the ball symbolized the sun, moon, and stars moving through the heavens, tracing the path of cosmic cycles. The game was a test of skill, strength, and cunning, but its ultimate purpose was to determine who would have the honor of being offered to the gods, a terrifying yet glorious conclusion for the players. The rules of the ballgame varied, but generally, two teams competed, attempting to propel a heavy rubber ball through small stone rings positioned high up on the court walls or to hit specific markers. Players could not use their hands or feet, relying instead on their hips, elbows, and knees to control the ball. The game was physically demanding, often resulting in severe injuries, but the stakes were far higher than mere victory. For the Aztecs, the ball game was often a proxy for actual warfare, a symbolic battle whose outcome had tangible religious consequences. The losing team, or more accurately, the appointed sacrificial victims, were almost always the ones to face the ultimate price. Imagine the tension as the game neared its conclusion, knowing that defeat meant not just shame, but a swift journey to the afterlife. Yet, in some rare instances, historical accounts suggest that the winning team, or at least a prominent player from it, would be chosen for sacrifice. This seemingly counterintuitive act underscores the profound honor associated with being deemed worthy enough to be offered to the gods, signifying that the gods favored the victorious and desired their purity and strength above all else. This choice elevated the sacrifice from a punishment to the highest form of devotion, a direct communion with the divine, reinforcing the idea that the greatest victory was to join the gods. The ritual sacrifice following the ball game was often conducted immediately on the court itself or at a nearby temple. Archaeological findings have revealed evidence of human sacrifices within ball courts, including depictions of decapitation, indicating that various methods were employed. The sight of a player, moments after a grueling match, being led to his ceremonial death would have been a powerful and chilling spectacle for the spectators, reinforcing the profound connection between sport, warfare, and religion in Aztec society. The blood of the sacrificed spilled on the sacred court was believed to nourish the earth and ensure the continuation of the cosmic cycles, mimicking the very movements of the celestial bodies the ball represented. This was not simply about vengeance or punishment, it was about cosmic necessity. The ball game, therefore, was a deeply spiritual endeavor, a dramatic representation of the universe in motion, where the players became instruments of divine will, and their ultimate sacrifice fueled the very existence of the cosmos. It stands as a testament to the Aztecs' complex worldview, where even recreation was imbued with sacred meaning and life itself was the ultimate offering to keep the world turning. While the ball game sacrifices offered a chilling end for adult warriors, the Aztecs also practiced offerings that touched the most vulnerable members of their society in a profound and often terrifying way. Child sacrifice specifically dedicated to the Cihuateteo. These were not the same as the tear-inducing sacrifices to Tlaloc. Instead, this ritual involved appeasing the deified women who died in childbirth, known as Cihuateteo. Imagine the deep reverence and fear surrounding these spirits within Aztec society. A woman who perished in labor was considered a fallen warrior, her death as valiant and honorable as that of a soldier on the battlefield. Her soul was believed to ascend to the highest heavens, accompanying the sun on its journey. However, after 4 years, these revered spirits were thought to descend to earth, becoming powerful and often malevolent entities. They were said to haunt crossroads, bringing illness, particularly to children, and even preying on the living, especially during specific ritual days. To the Aztecs, these Cihuateteo were not merely benevolent ancestors. They were formidable forces, capable of both protection and immense harm, and their insatiable hunger for appeasement was a constant source of societal anxiety. The specific rituals involved in appeasing these powerful and unpredictable female deities were often grim, reflecting the fear of their potential wrath. Children, especially infants who were pure and innocent, were believed to be particularly susceptible to the influence of the Cihuateteo. It was thought that these spirits, having been denied the opportunity to raise their own children, would try to snatch the children of the living, causing illnesses, seizures, or even death. Therefore, offerings of children, typically infants or very young children, were made to the Cihuateteo to soothe their perceived envy and prevent them from harming the community's young. This wasn't a choice made lightly. It was a desperate act born out of a profound belief in the spiritual dangers posed by these deified mothers. The practice underscores the Aztecs' complex understanding of the afterlife and the nuanced nature of their deities, where even the most honored of the dead could become a source of dread if not properly acknowledged. These offerings frequently took place at crossroads, places where the boundaries between worlds were believed to be thin, making them ideal spots for communication with spirits that walked between realms. Small effigies of the Cihuatateo, often with skeletal features and clawed hands, were placed there, and accompanying them would be the human offerings. While historical accounts are not as explicit about the exact method of death for these specific child sacrifices compared to, say, those for Tlaloc, it can be inferred that they involved methods that ensured the child's spirit, or tonali, was effectively transferred to the Cihuatateo. This could have involved strangulation, suffocation, or even leaving infants exposed at these crossroads, allowing the Cihuatateo to claim them. The ultimate goal was to ensure the continued protection of the living children within the community, buying their safety through the ultimate price. The ritual, though chilling to modern sensibilities, was a desperate plea for cosmic protection, a heart-wrenching attempt to safeguard the future generation from unseen, powerful forces that blurred the lines between the revered dead and the malevolent spirit. While some Aztec rituals invoked dramatic, high-stakes sacrifices, others were deeply intertwined with the rhythms of their agricultural life, embodying a profound plea for sustenance. Among these was the fascinating Atamalqualistli festival, or the eating of water tamales ceremony, a unique ritual that combined fasting, purification, and underwater performances to honor vital agricultural deities. This was not a ceremony of violent death, but a more subtle, yet equally demanding, act of devotion rooted in the very core of their existence, the sustenance provided by maize. Imagine the scene during this festival, which typically occurred every 8 years. Agricultural productivity was paramount to the Aztecs as crop failures spelled famine and disaster. The Atamalqualistli was a period of intense purification, particularly for the priests who prepared themselves through rigorous fasting and abstinence. For 8 days, they would consume only plain, unflavored water tamales, stripped of any seasoning or richness, symbolizing a return to a primordial, unadulterated state of being and a direct appeal to the earth for its bounty. This simple, bland diet allowed them to cleanse their bodies and spirits, making them pure vessels for the profound aquatic rituals that were to follow. The very act of eating these water tamales underscored their dependence on nature's most basic elements for survival, a humble acknowledgement of their reliance on the divine for food and life. The culmination of the Atamalqualistli festival involved extraordinary underwater rituals, a spectacle designed to directly appeal to the rain gods and earth deities that governed agricultural abundance. Priests adorned in ceremonial attire would submerge themselves in sacred lakes or pools, performing intricate dances and offerings beneath the surface. This was a visually unique and deeply symbolic act, directly connecting the human realm with the watery abodes of gods like Tlaloc, the rain god, and Chalchutlicue, the goddess of lakes and rivers. The imagery of the priests moving gracefully through the water, their movements perhaps mimicking the flow of rivers or the dance of raindrops, was a living prayer for moisture. The underwater setting emphasized the crucial role of water in sustaining life, a direct appeal to the source of all fertility. While specific details on the exact nature of sacrifices within these underwater performances are sparse, it is believed that offerings, perhaps symbolic or even small animal sacrifices, were presented in the aquatic environment, laid upon submerged altars or released into the depths as direct gifts to the water deities. The very act of performing in such an environment was itself a profound offering, demonstrating the priest's dedication and willingness to enter the god's domain. The Atamalqualistli festival showcased a unique combination of water and agricultural symbolism, emphasizing the interconnectedness of these elements in the Aztec worldview. Water was not merely a commodity, it was the lifeblood of their crops, the source of their sustenance, and the domain of powerful, unpredictable deities. Through these underwater rituals and the accompanying acts of purification and fasting, the Aztecs sought to forge a deeper connection with these forces, coaxing them to unleash the life-giving rains that were so vital to their survival. The purity of the water tamales symbolized the purity of their intentions, a humble yet powerful plea for continued blessings from the earth and the heavens. The festival was a profound demonstration of their understanding of ecological cycles and their deep spiritual reliance on nature. It underscores the Aztecs' multi-faceted approach to appeasing their deities, understanding that some gods required blood, while others, particularly those tied to the gentle rhythms of nature, were best honored through acts of humility, symbolic immersion, and deep ecological reverence. This ritual serves as a powerful reminder that not all Aztec sacrifices were about violence. Many were about profound connection, purification, and a humble yet powerful plea for the continued bounty of the earth. While many Aztec rituals focused on life-giving and life-taking, another profoundly symbolic yet tragically destructive practice involved the ceremonial burning of codices. Imagine a scene where not a human life, but vast repositories of knowledge, history, and spiritual understanding were intentionally consumed by flames during specific sacred festivals. These codices, meticulously crafted from deer hide or fig bark, were the Aztecs' books, their vibrant pictograms and glyphs recording everything from astronomical observations and calendrical calculations to divine prophecies, historical narratives, and intricate ritual instructions. They were the very fabric of their intellectual and spiritual heritage, living testaments to a sophisticated civilization. Yet, at certain calendrical junctures, particularly during ceremonies marking the end of a 52-year cycle, or during the Toxcatl festival, these precious works were gathered and ritually destroyed. This was not an act of wanton destruction, but a deeply complex religious act believed to be essential for the cyclical renewal of all things. From the Aztec perspective, this ritualistic destruction, though seemingly counterintuitive, was rooted in a profound belief in cosmic cycles and the necessity of periodical renewal. They believed that time itself was cyclical and that at the end of each major calendrical period, the old had to be purged to make way for the new. Just as the world needed to be periodically renewed through great sacrifices, so too did knowledge and sacred texts. By burning the codices, the Aztecs believed they were symbolically returning this accumulated wisdom to the gods, allowing it to be purified and then reborn, fresh and vital for the next cycle. It was a gesture of humility and devotion, an acknowledgement that all knowledge ultimately belonged to the divine and that its continued efficacy depended on this periodic cleansing. After the burning, new codices would be commissioned, reflecting the renewed cosmic order and incorporating new insights and events of the new era. This practice underscored their cyclical view of time, where destruction was a necessary precursor to creation, and death was an integral part of life's perpetual renewal. It was a terrifying act of faith, sacrificing the tangible records of the past to ensure the continued vitality of the future. However, the tragic irony of this ritualistic burning became brutally clear with the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors. The Spanish, particularly the Catholic friars, saw these codices not as sacred texts, but as abominable works of the devil, filled with pagan idolatry and demonic knowledge. They misinterpreted the Aztec cyclical renewal as a continuous pagan practice, intensifying their zeal for destruction. While the Aztecs themselves periodically burned their own books as part of a sacred routine, the Spanish initiated a far more pervasive and systematic destruction, leading to an almost complete eradication of pre-Hispanic Aztec literature. The infamous autos da fe, or acts of faith, orchestrated by figures like Friar Juan de Zumárraga, saw countless codices go up in smoke, not for ritual renewal but for complete annihilation. This catastrophic loss left an irreplaceable void in our understanding of the Aztec world, Imagine losing almost all the books, historical records, and scientific treatises of an entire civilization. The impact of this double-edged destruction, both indigenous and European, is immeasurable. Today, only a handful of pre-Columbian Aztec codices survive, scattered in European museums, tiny fragments of a once vast library. These few remaining treasures offer tantalizing glimpses into a complex belief system, a sophisticated historical tradition, and a rich artistic culture that would otherwise be almost entirely lost to us. The burning of the codices, whether by Aztec priests seeking renewal or by Spanish friars seeking conversion, stands as a poignant reminder of the fragility of knowledge and the profound loss that occurs when cultures clash and understanding gives way to fear and zealotry. It represents not only a vanished aspect of Aztec ritual life, but also a tragic void in humanity's collective memory, a lost library of thought, history, and spiritual insight that we can only imperfectly reconstruct from the few fragile remnants that survived the flames. From the tragic cultural losses stemming from the burning of codices, we now turn to a chilling Aztec ritual demonstrating a different form of purification and offering, the Izcalli festival sacrifices. Imagine a month-long period of deep spiritual significance, culminating in a series of shocking child sacrifices meticulously interwoven with fire. This wasn't merely a single, brutal act, but a prolonged ceremonial process, believed to purify the young victims, preparing them for their ultimate consecration and ensuring abundance for the community. The Izcalli festival, dedicated primarily to Xiuhtecuhtli, the god of fire, occurred at the very end of the Aztec calendar year, a time of transition and renewal. It was a period when the Aztecs sought to cleanse themselves of the old and usher in the new, ensuring the vitality of their society and the fertility of their lands for the coming cycle. The ceremonies were marked by elaborate preparations, including fasting, offerings, and special dances, all designed to honor the powerful, transformative energy of fire. The most harrowing aspect of the Izcalli festival involved the repeated passage of young children through flames. This horrifying ritual was deeply rooted in the Aztec belief in fire as a purifying, transformative element. The children, usually infants or very young, were not immediately killed. Instead, they were ceremonially passed through large bonfires multiple times, their tender bodies exposed to the licking flames, enduring searing heat and agonizing pain. This ordeal was a form of ritual purification, believed to cleanse them of any earthly impurities, making them pristine offerings fit for the gods. The passage through fire was seen as a transformative journey, preparing their spirits to ascend to the divine realm and serve as powerful intercessors for the community. It also linked their sacrifice directly to Xiuhtecuhtli, the fire god, ensuring his benevolence for the coming year and his guardianship over the new fire that would ultimately ignite the next calendrical cycle. The screams and terror of the children, though heartbreaking to our modern sensibilities, were for the Aztecs an integral part of the offering, a raw, unfiltered expression of life being transformed by divine fire. Following these agonizing fiery passages, the children were not released. Instead, their ordeal culminated in final execution, most commonly through heart extraction, though other methods suitable for infants, such as strangulation or decapitation, might also have been employed. The heart, already purified and prepared by the fire, was considered an exceptionally potent offering, its tonally imbued with the transformative power of Xiuhtecuhtli. This dual ritual, first fire, then final death, underscored the Aztec belief in the necessity of extreme measures to achieve sacred outcomes. The repeated exposure to fire was a testament to the god's immense power and the human capacity for endurance, while the ultimate sacrifice sealed the pact between the community and the divine. For the Aztecs, the profound suffering endured by the children was not gratuitous. It was a necessary component of the ritual, amplifying the power and efficacy of the offering. It was a tangible demonstration of their unwavering commitment to maintaining cosmic order and securing the blessings of the fire god, who controlled not only warmth and light but also the very cycles of life and death. The Izcalli festival, occurring at the close of their calendar year, held immense calendrical significance. It was a time for reflection on the year past and anticipation for the year to come. The purification of the children through fire and their subsequent sacrifice symbolized the burning away of the old year's impurities and the fiery birth of the new. This ritual was believed to ensure successful harvests, protect against disease, and guarantee the continuation of the sun's journey for another cycle. The intense focus on children as victims further emphasized the themes of renewal and future prosperity. Children, being at the beginning of life, represented the future, and their sacrifice was thus seen as a powerful investment in the community's continued existence and well-being. It was a terrifying yet deeply logical ritual within the Aztec framework, a testament to their profound belief in cyclical time, purification through suffering, and the ultimate necessity of sacrificing the most innocent to secure the future of the collective. While many Aztec rituals involved the harrowing sacrifice of others, a different, equally profound, and often more personal form of devotion manifested through the terrifying practice of self-torture. This wasn't about ending a life, but about offering one's own flesh, blood, and pain as a direct communication with the divine. Imagine a devotee, not a victim, but a willing participant, perhaps a priest or a noble, preparing for a long vigil or a sacred ceremony. Their tools lay before them: sharp obsidian blades, stingray spines, meticulously crafted bone awls, or even ropes fashioned from agave fibers, each implement designed to inflict precise, controlled, yet agonizing pain. This was not a punishment, but a sacred duty, a deeply personal negotiation with the gods, underpinning the belief that the shedding of one's own vital fluids could appease the divine and secure blessings for the community. The practices were varied but consistently extreme. Devotees would pierce different parts of their bodies, each location carrying its own symbolic weight. The tongue, crucial for speech and prayer, was a frequent target. Imagine a priest threading a barbed rope through a freshly made hole in his tongue, pulling it back and forth, the act causing excruciating pain and a flow of blood. This was believed to empower their prayers, making their words more potent and ensuring they reached the ears of the gods. Similarly, the ears, seen as channels for receiving divine messages, were also repeatedly pierced, often with multiple ornaments or ropes threaded through them, signifying open reception to spiritual guidance. Perhaps most viscerally, the genitals, the penis for men, and occasionally the labia or clitoris for women, were subjected to piercing. This was an exceptionally potent offering, directly linking the life-giving fluids of human reproduction with the divine forces of creation and fertility. The pain, the blood, and the raw vulnerability of these self-inflicted wounds were a direct appeal to deities associated with sustenance and new beginnings, a deeply personal and profound act of reciprocity for the gift of life and fertility. The spiritual meaning behind this self-inflicted pain was multifaceted and deeply ingrained in the Aztec worldview. Firstly, it was seen as an act of purification, cleansing the body and spirit of impurities, making the individual worthy of divine interaction. The pain was transformative, transmuting the mundane into the sacred. Secondly, it was a way of accumulating tonale, the vital life force, preparing it to be released as a potent offering. By drawing their own blood, individuals provided a continuous stream of this divine energy to the gods, a personal contribution to the cosmic balance that ensured the sun continued its journey and the crops continued to grow. This continuous offering of personal blood was a stark alternative to, or often a complement of, the larger human sacrifices, emphasizing that every individual had a role to play in sustaining the universe. Thirdly, it was a profound act of penance and thanksgiving, a way to express humility before the immense power of the gods and to acknowledge their dependency on divine benevolence for every aspect of their existence, from agricultural success to military victories. This practice, while extreme, was omnipresent in Aztec society, differentiating it from the less frequent, grand-scale human sacrifices. It underscores a fundamental belief that suffering, particularly self-inflicted suffering in a ritual context, was not merely endured but embraced as a pathway to the divine. The very act of threading ropes through wounds, the visual of blood dripping onto paper that would then be burned, the constant throbbing pain, all served as a tangible, visceral reminder of the intimate connection between human devotion and cosmic order. These acts of self-torture were not about nihilism or self-hatred, but about hyper-life, about feeding the universe, about being an active, often agonizingly so, participant in the sacred drama of creation and renewal. It was a testament to a profound faith where the body itself became the ultimate altar, and personal pain was transformed into a powerful conduit for divine communication and sustenance. From the harrowing depths of self-torture and the intense personal devotion it represented, we now turn to a set of rituals that merged imitation, performance, and sacrifice with a singular aim, bringing the life-sustaining rains. This brings us to the Quetzalcoatlustli ceremony, a complex and deeply symbolic rain-making ritual that involved priests imitating water creatures and performing aquatic sacrifices, often with chilling precision, to petition the powerful rain gods for agricultural abundance. Imagine the scene during this pivotal festival, which typically occurred around the time when the maize crops most desperately needed water to mature. The air would hum with anticipation, a collective plea for the heavens to open. Priests, deeply versed in the intricate lore of water deities, would undertake a series of demanding preparations, including fasting and purification rites, to make themselves worthy conduits for divine communication. The heart of the Quetzalcoatlustli ceremony lay in its unique performative elements. Priests would don elaborate costumes and engage in dances and movements designed to imitate various water creatures, frogs, ducks, fish, and other aquatic animals. These carefully choreographed imitations were not mere entertainment. They were acts of sympathetic magic, a profound attempt to mimic the behavior of water-dwelling beings in the hope of summoning the very essence of rain. Picture a group of priests, their bodies painted blue and green, their movements fluid and rhythmic, leaping and splashing, their croaks and calls echoing those of the animals that thrived in the watery domain of Tlaloc. This immersive performance was a direct appeal, a living prayer, attempting to coax the rain gods by embodying the very creatures that symbolized their power and their gifts. The sights and sounds of these imitations would fill the ceremonial spaces, creating an atmosphere charged with a potent mix of reverence and desperate hope. These theatrical enactments would culminate in a series of aquatic sacrifices, with victims often drowned in a specific, ritualized manner. The victims, typically captives or designated individuals, would be led to sacred bodies of water, lakes, cenotes, or specially constructed pools. The act of drowning was chosen for its direct symbolism, connecting the life being offered directly to the watery realm of the rain gods. However, what makes the Quetzalcoatlustli sacrifices particularly chilling is the historical accounts suggesting that some victims were drowned in a pattern, perhaps in a sequence or at specific locations within the water, designed to create ripples or currents that mimic the flow of rain or the movement of water across fields. This level of meticulous detail underscores the Aztec belief that every aspect of the ritual had to be precisely executed to ensure its efficacy. The victims' lives were not just thrown away, they were carefully integrated into a larger, more intricate plea for cosmic balance. Their deaths were a direct exchange, their vital life force believed to transform into the life-giving essence of rain. The profound significance of these rituals cannot be overstated for an agrarian society like the Aztecs, where the success of their maize crops was directly tied to their survival. Drought meant famine, disease, and societal collapse. Thus, the Quetzalcoatlistli ceremony was a desperate and awe-inspiring attempt to control the most unpredictable force of nature, rainfall. By offering human lives, by mimicking the creatures of the water, and by performing these elaborate aquatic ballets, the Aztecs believed they were actively participating in the cosmic dance that brought forth sustenance. The terrifying logic was that to receive the precious gift of water, they had to give back the most precious gift of all, human life, meticulously offered in a manner that mirrored the very phenomenon they sought to invoke. It serves as a powerful testament to the lengths they would go to secure their agricultural abundance, transforming desperation into a complex ritual of imitative magic and ultimate sacrifice. Even as the Aztecs performed their public spectacles of sacrifice and self-torture, another profound, often clandestine, ritual unfolded in the shadows of their temples and homes, the ritual use of hallucinogens. This wasn't about recreational escape, it was a deeply sacred practice, a controlled journey into altered states of consciousness, meticulously guided by priests and diviners to communicate directly with the gods, gain divine insight, and often to prepare for the harrowing acts of human sacrifice that followed. Imagine a priest fasting and purifying himself, sitting in a dimly lit chamber, perhaps adorned with ceremonial regalia, as he prepares to ingest a substance that will bridge the gap between the earthly and the divine. The air is thick with the scent of copal incense, and the faint sounds of distant drums might accompany the internal journey. For the Aztecs, these psychoactive plants were not drugs in the modern sense, but Teonanacatl, or flesh of the gods, living manifestations of divine power that could grant visions, wisdom, and direct communion with the spirit world. The Aztec pharmacopoeia was rich with entheogenic plants, each revered for its unique properties and spiritual applications. Among the most prominent were ololuqui, the seeds of the morning glory vine. These seeds contained ergoline alkaloids similar to those found in ergot fungus, inducing strong visionary experiences, often accompanied by a sensation of flying or disembodiment. Another key substance was Teonanacatl, referring to various species of psilocybin mushrooms. These sacred mushrooms were known for their profound psychedelic effects, capable of producing vivid hallucinations, intense emotional experiences, and a deep sense of spiritual connection. Other plants such as Peyote Lophophora williamsii, although more commonly associated with northern Mesoamerican cultures, were also known and occasionally used in Aztec ritual contexts. Each plant was seen as embodying a particular deity or having specific divine attributes, and their consumption was always approached with immense reverence, preparation, and ritual intent, never casually. The ingestion of these substances was a solemn ceremony in itself, a gateway to the sacred that demanded respect and careful guidance. The primary purpose of these hallucinogenic rituals was to facilitate direct communication with the gods. Priests and shamans would consume these substances to enter a trance state, believing that their spirits could then leave their bodies and journey into the spiritual realms, interacting with deities, ancestral spirits, and gaining knowledge directly from the divine source. This divine insight was crucial for a society that believed every aspect of their lives was governed by the will of the gods. Visions obtained during these altered states could reveal the causes of illness, predict the outcome of battles, disclose the location of lost objects, or, most critically, provide guidance on how to appease angered deities or ensure cosmic balance. The priest, acting as an intermediary, would interpret these visions for the community, translating the cryptic messages of the gods into actionable directives, ensuring the continuity of the sacred order. Crucially, these visionary experiences often preceded human sacrifices. Imagine a priest having communed with Tezcatlipoca through ololuqui, receiving a divine imperative for a specific sacrificial offering. The hallucinogenic journey would not only confirm the necessity of the sacrifice, but could also inform its details: who should be sacrificed, how, and when. This pre-sacrificial use of hallucinogens served multiple purposes: Firstly, it legitimized the act, providing divine justification for the often gruesome practice, turning it into a sacred mandate rather than mere violence. The priest was not acting on his own volition, but as an instrument of the gods. Secondly, it could induce a state of heightened spiritual connection and perhaps a disassociation that enabled the priests to perform such acts with unwavering conviction, viewing the victim not as a human being but as a vessel for vital energy to be offered to the gods. The visionary state could transform the perspective of the sacrificer, embedding the act within a powerful, divine narrative that transcended earthly suffering. This use of nature's potent gifts to commune with the divine underscores the profound spiritual depth and often terrifying practicality that permeated every aspect of Aztec ritual life, blurring the lines between vision, reality, and the ultimate act of devotion. From the profound, often bewildering, use of hallucinogens to commune with the divine, we transition to a ritual that epitomized Aztec military might, religious fervor, and a terrifying theatricality, the Panquetzalistli festival or the banner-raising ceremony. Imagine the central plaza of Tenochtitlan, ablaze with color and sound, transformed into an immense stage for this annual celebration dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, the supreme god of war and the sun, the very deity that guided the Aztecs to their promised land. This was a spectacle unlike any other, a deliberate display of imperial power and religious devotion, designed to reaffirm the Aztecs' divine mandate to conquer and rule. The festival's name, banner raising, hinted at its martial focus as banners and standards, symbols of military units and deities, were prominently displayed throughout the capital, signifying the martial prowess and unwavering faith of the Aztec people. But beneath the celebratory facade lay a chilling core, a series of elaborately orchestrated human sacrifices, meticulously designed to honor the insatiable hunger of their patron deity. The central act of the Panquetzalistli festival involved the selection of war captives, not for a swift, quiet offering, but for a prolonged, agonizing ordeal that maximized public spectacle and demonstrated the overwhelming power of the Aztec state. These captives, often chosen for their bravery and strength in battle, were forced to participate in a harrowing ritual obstacle course, specifically designed to break their spirit and prolong their suffering before their ultimate demise. Imagine these unfortunate individuals, stripped of their dignity and their will, being herded through a series of physical challenges. They might have been forced to climb steep temple steps, their bodies already weakened by days or weeks of captivity and ritual fasting, while being taunted and prodded by Aztec warriors and priests. Some accounts suggest they were made to carry heavy burdens or navigate treacherous paths, perhaps under a barrage of symbolic attacks, all designed to exhaust them and parade their subjugation before the cheering crowds. This wasn't merely a march to the altar, it was a ritualized gauntlet, turning the captive's final journey into a public performance of submission and a stark display of Aztec dominance. Every stumble, every strained breath, every defiant glance from the captive would have been absorbed by the eager spectators, amplifying the drama and the ritual's profound impact. The theatrical elements of these rituals were paramount. The Aztecs understood the power of spectacle, and the Panquetzalistli festival was a masterclass in public performance, designed to awe, inspire, and terrify. The sheer scale of the event, with thousands of participants and tens of thousands of spectators, transformed the entire city into a living theater. Priests, adorned in elaborate, fearsome regalia, embodying the very gods they served, would preside over the ceremonies, their movements deliberate and precise. The rhythmic beat of drums would underscore the procession, building to a crescendo as the captives approached the sacrificial altars. Chants and hymns would fill the air, creating an almost hypnotic atmosphere that blurred the lines between reality and divine intervention. The climax of this macabre performance was, of course, the sacrifice itself. After enduring the grueling obstacle course, the captives would finally be brought to the summit of the Templo Mayor or other designated sacrificial sites. There, as the crowd watched in mesmerized silence, their hearts would be extracted in the customary manner, a final, bloody offering to Huitzilopochtli, ensuring his continued favor and the martial success of the Aztec Empire. These public spectacles served multiple crucial purposes beyond mere religious appeasement. Firstly, they were powerful tools for social cohesion, uniting the Aztec populace in a collective act of devotion and reinforcing their shared identity as the chosen people of Huitzilopochtli. Seeing the power of their gods manifested through such dramatic rituals instilled a deep sense of national pride and spiritual certainty. Secondly, and perhaps most overtly, they served as a terrifying demonstration of imperial power to conquered and tributary states. The sight of their own captured warriors being paraded through the capital and then ritualistically sacrificed sent an unequivocal message. Resistance was futile, and defying the Aztec Empire meant ultimate submission and a gruesome end on the sacred stone. This public humiliation and extermination of enemies, framed within a sacred context, was a profound act of psychological warfare designed to instill fear and prevent rebellion, ensuring the continued flow of tribute and captives. The Panquetzalistli festival, therefore, was far more than just a religious ceremony. It was a carefully choreographed display of political might, a powerful reinforcement of their unique worldview where warfare, religion, and the fate of the cosmos were inextricably intertwined, culminating in a dramatic and terrifying display of power and faith. While many Aztec rituals focused on the sun or rain gods, an equally profound and often terrifying set of sacrifices honored the powerful earth goddesses, particularly those associated with fertility, agriculture, and the cyclical nature of life and death. This brings us to a specific, deeply disturbing practice, the sacrifice of women to these chthonic deities, often involving decapitation and flaying. Imagine a scene deeply rooted in the agricultural calendar, perhaps during festivals marking the transition from dry season to wet, or the crucial moments of planting and harvesting. The Aztecs believed that the earth was a living, breathing, and often hungry entity, and that it required sustenance, specifically the vital force of human blood and skin, to continue yielding its bounty. Women, as bearers of life and symbols of fertility, were considered especially potent offerings to goddesses like Tlazolteotl, the goddess of purification, filth, and midwives, or Coatlicue, the fearsome mother goddess representing both the generative and destructive powers of the earth. These were not random acts of violence, but meticulously orchestrated rituals where the female body was treated as a sacred vessel, its sacrifice a direct plea for cosmic fecundity and agricultural abundance. The ritual often began with the ceremonial decapitation of the chosen women. This was a direct, definitive act severing the head, the seat of consciousness and identity, from the body, releasing the vital energy in a dramatic outpouring of blood. The act of decapitation itself held profound symbolic meaning, mirroring the harvesting of crops where the fruit or grain is separated from the stalk. It represented a return of life to its source, a symbolic pruning that ensured future growth. The blood, rich with life-giving properties, would be allowed to flow onto the earth, fertilizing it and symbolically nourishing the very ground that sustained the Aztec people. This act underscored the belief that life emerged from death, and that the earth, being the ultimate provider, required reciprocal nourishment in the form of human essence. The sight of a severed head, especially during a solemn ceremony, would have been a powerful, visceral reminder of the cyclical nature of existence and the gods' demand for ultimate reciprocity. Following decapitation, and perhaps even more unsettling, was the flaying of the body. This practice, reminiscent of the tributes paid to Xipe-Totec, took on an even more symbolic and gruesome dimension when applied to women sacrificed to earth goddesses. The flayed skin would then be worn by priests or possibly by barren women for a period. This was not about punishment or degradation. It was a deeply symbolic act intended to represent the shedding of the old earth, like the dry, cracked ground after harvest or drought, and the emergence of new, fertile life, the soft, pliable skin beneath. By wearing the flayed skin of the sacrificed woman, the priest or worshipper became a living embodiment of the earth goddess, partaking in her transformative power and her ability to bring forth new life. For barren women, wearing the skin might have been a desperate plea for fertility, hoping to absorb the generative essence of the sacrificed woman and appeal directly to the earth goddesses for the gift of childbirth. The sight and smell of decaying human skin, though horrific to us, was a profound visual sermon for the Aztecs, a constant, tangible reminder of the gritty reality of regeneration and the cycle of decay and rebirth that was essential for their survival. After the flaying, the bodies of these sacrificed women were treated with immense reverence, far from being discarded. They were considered sacred objects, imbued with the divine essence of the goddesses they had been offered to. Their remains, particularly the defleshed skulls, were sometimes incorporated into sacred effigies of the earth goddesses themselves, serving as the eyes or other prominent features of the divine statues. This act transformed the victim's remains from a mere body into a permanent, venerated part of the deity's representation, ensuring their continued sacred presence within the temple. This treatment underscores the Aztec belief that the sacrifice was not an end, but a transformation, and that the victims continued to serve a vital spiritual purpose even after death. Their bodies, having nourished the earth and embodied the goddesses, were considered vital components of the sacred landscape, reinforcing the intricate connection between life, death, and the divine forces of fertility and regeneration that governed the Aztec world. From the profound, if disturbing, reverence for earth goddesses and their demands for life, we plunge into a ritual of pure, unadulterated terror, the Night of the Hungry Gods. This wasn't merely a ceremony, it was a nightmarish spectacle where the very fabric of the cosmos seemed to tear open, allowing malevolent star demons to descend and feast on human hearts. Imagine a city plunged into darkness, not by an extinguished fire, but by a deliberate act of spiritual vulnerability, as terrifying processions wound through its streets. Priests embodying these fearsome celestial beings would transform themselves, their human forms obscured by grotesque masks, dark body paint, and chilling regalia designed to evoke the predatory nature of the star demons. The air would be thick with the rhythmic thud of drums, the mournful wail of flutes, and the guttural chants of the priests, creating an atmosphere of palpable dread. This was a night where the boundaries between the human and the demonic blurred, and the very gods themselves seemed to stalk the streets, demanding their horrific sustenance. These terrifying nocturnal ceremonies were primarily dedicated to the Itzamime, fearsome star demons often depicted as skeletal female figures with gaping mouths and clawed hands, associated with the stars, darkness, and the west where the sun descended into the underworld. The Aztecs believed these entities were particularly dangerous during solar eclipses or at the end of calendrical cycles when the forces of chaos threatened to overwhelm cosmic order. During these vulnerable times, the Itzamime were thought to descend to Earth, seeking to devour humanity and plunge the world into eternal darkness. To appease these dreadful beings, or perhaps to embody and control their destructive power, priests would ritually impersonate them. These impersonators were not merely acting, they were believed to become vessels for the Itzamime, literally embodying the hunger and terror of these celestial predators. The processions through the cities were therefore not just symbolic, they were the actual movement of hungry gods seeking their due in human sacrifice. The goal was to feed the demons just enough to satisfy them, preventing a full-scale cosmic catastrophe. The heart of these nightmarish processions lay in their terrifying purpose to collect sacrificial victims for these celestial beings. As the Itzamime impersonators moved through the darkened streets, their grotesque appearance and the eerie sounds accompanying them would have struck terror into the hearts of any onlookers. Imagine hiding in your home, peeking through a crack in the door, as a procession of skeletal figures with clawed hands and empty eyes passed by, their chilling chants echoing in the night. The victims for these rituals were often captives or individuals specifically designated for this harrowing fate, but the element of unpredictable, predatory selection during the procession could not be entirely ruled out, heightening the fear. The priests, fully immersed in their roles as hungry star demons, would select or receive the victims, who were then likely led or dragged to designated sacrificial sites, often the summit of the Templo Maya or other prominent altars. The final act would be the familiar, brutal heart extraction, the still beating organ ripped from the chest and offered directly to the night sky, a bloody meal for the hungry gods. The blood spilled under the stars symbolized the very essence of life being consumed by the entities it sought to appease. The psychological impact of the Night of the Hungry Gods on the Aztec populace would have been immense. It was a visceral reminder of the fragile balance of their cosmos and the constant, lurking threat of annihilation. The very stars which provided light and guidance could also harbor malevolent entities eager to devour the world. These rituals reinforced the idea that human sacrifice was not just for the sun, but for the entire pantheon of hungry gods whose appetites were as varied as their domain. It also underscored the power and authority of the priesthood, who alone could embody and negotiate with such terrifying forces. By performing these nightmarish processions and offering human lives, the Aztecs believed they were actively participating in the cosmic struggle, pushing back the forces of chaos and ensuring the sun's return, the continued movement of the stars, and the very survival of their world. This ritual, therefore, stands as a chilling testament to the Aztecs' profound understanding of the universe as a place of both creation and terrifying destruction, where even the heavens held entities that demanded a horrifying price for existence. While we've delved into some of the most dramatic and terrifying Aztec rituals, the daily fabric of their spiritual life was woven from a far more intricate and predictable pattern: the great monthly ceremonies. Imagine an entire civilization living by a sacred calendar, a precise blueprint for existence where each of the 18 months, comprising 20 days, was meticulously assigned its own specific sacrificial rituals and dedicated to particular gods. This wasn't a matter of random offerings, it was a deeply ingrained seasonal rhythm, a continuous dialogue with the divine that ensured the sun's journey, the earth's fertility, and the overall balance of the cosmos. Each month, with its unique agricultural focus and celestial alignment, demanded different types of victims and specific forms of ritual, creating a vibrant, yet often chilling, tapestry of devotion that permeated every aspect of Aztec life. This systematic approach to sacrifice highlights the Aztecs' profound understanding of their environment and their deities, creating a predictable flow of life and death that mirrored the natural world around them. The Aztec calendar was a sophisticated instrument, far more than just a tracking system for days. It was a sacred roadmap guiding their rituals and their agricultural cycles. Each of the 18 months was a distinct ceremonial period, intricately linked to the changing seasons and the associated needs of the land and its people. For instance, the month of Tlacaxiphualistli, often falling in our February or March, was dedicated to Xipe-Totic, the flayed god. As we discussed, this was the time for the ritual flaying of human skin, symbolizing the earth shedding its dry, old skin to prepare for new growth, a clear connection to the coming spring and planting season. The type of sacrifice, the flaying, directly reflected the symbolic function of the god and the seasonal transition. Conversely, during months associated with the height of the rainy season, such as Huitzilopochtli around July, the rituals would shift to emphasize water deities like Tlaloc. Here, the focus might be on child sacrifices, their tears a poignant plea for continued rainfall, demonstrating a clear seasonal pattern in their offerings. The Aztecs meticulously matched the nature of their sacrifice to the specific divine power they sought to influence, creating a logical, albeit brutal, system of propitiation. This systematic approach extended to the types of victims required for each month's ceremonies. Different gods demanded different offerings, and the Aztecs ensured their ritual calendar reflected this divine diversity. For example, young, beautiful women might be offered to Xochiquetzal, the goddess of fertility, flowers, and beauty, particularly during months associated with growth and abundance. Warriors, especially brave captives, were almost exclusively reserved for Huitzilopochtli, the sun and war god, ensuring his strength for the daily cosmic battle. The choice of victim was never arbitrary. It was a carefully calculated decision based on the deity's domain and the symbolic meaning of the sacrifice. This meant that the flow of victims, along with the nature of their demise, varied throughout the year, preventing a monotonous repetition and ensuring that each monthly ceremony held its own distinct significance and terror. The logistics of maintaining such a steady and varied supply of sacrificial subjects would have required immense organization and a continuous influx of captives from the ongoing flowery wars and conquests. Beyond the major sacrificial acts, each monthly ceremony often involved a complex array of supporting rituals, including elaborate dances, processions, feasting, and the construction of temporary altars and effigies. Priests would perform intricate rites, often involving autosacrifice, incense burning, and the singing of hymns dedicated to the month's patron deity. The entire community would participate to varying degrees, from the highest nobles to the humblest farmers, solidifying their collective identity and their shared belief system. This constant cycle of ritual ensured that the gods were continuously honored, their appetites sated, and their benevolence maintained. The regularity of these ceremonies also provided a rhythm to Aztec life, structuring their year around these sacred obligations. Unlike singular, massive events, these monthly rituals were the steady heartbeat of the empire, a consistent affirmation of their faith and their pact with the divine. The systematic nature of these monthly ceremonies also highlights the profound theological depth of the Aztec religion. Their gods were not isolated entities but part of an interconnected pantheon, each with specific roles and needs. The calendar served as a divine schedule, ensuring that no deity was neglected and that the cosmic machinery continued to function smoothly. Neglecting a god or failing to offer the appropriate sacrifice in the designated month could lead to divine wrath, manifest as drought, famine, disease, or military defeat. Thus, the rigid adherence to the monthly sacrificial calendar was not merely tradition. It was an existential necessity, a continuous effort to maintain the delicate balance of their world. This intricate system of seasonal sacrifices stands as a powerful testament to the Aztecs' complex worldview, where every aspect of their existence, from agricultural cycles to the fate of the universe, was meticulously interwoven with the rhythms of ritual and the shedding of human life.